Buenas, aquí estamos con Radio New York. Pone Hitler Browns porque es el B del UFO. Estáis en marrón los portales. Spain ahora es amigo del japonés. Igual que a ti te soltó Perabur y pasados 70 años estás llena. No me da un B con veneno eso. Pues yo no le digo al primo la muerte de la Gestapo. Y simplemente maestro, ¿hay un UFO en el jardín, sí o no? ¿Hay un UFO en el jardín, sí o no? Cerraron comisaría en el 19 y en el 13 el cuartelillo de la Guardia Civil. Ni va en verano a la playa, ni va a gótica ni a 24 horas. Pues es el B del UFO. Leo el marrón en la comida. Metéis cámaras en las aulas y obligáis a los alumnos. Después las patenta el LAN desde Kilo. Pero data mi ordenador. Data mi ordenador. Como tú lo ves, son billetes. ¿Cuántos portales tienes en Estados Unidos? Y tu nivel de vida. Te chispas con una copa de alcohol y sales en los medios, eso. El invento de la antena es del búnker. En cuanto al señor de la luz, soltó Hiroshima y Nagasaki a Einstein. Y la cobarde es Hanoi, eso. Lo sabéis, es el B del UFO, el apogato de Marte, eso. Que ya tiene simán y acetona cloruro de yodo. Y te para el camino. Eso ya que hacéis vosotros solos, eso. No da un medio veneno, eso. Es imposible en física y matemáticas. Según Mastrogán y Agustín, el jardinero de Nelson, hasta los 18 sobre Agustín, hay un UFO del jardín. Hay un UFO del jardín. Según Agustín, es del UFO. Y es imposible en física y matemáticas.
Drinking tea and debating ideas online. These companies help us share information as easily and as fast as possible, to the point where things, many say, have
¿Cómo será mi audio?
Yeah, absolutely.
La cobarde es
optimized for frictionless virality. And if you want to be able to
Pero te chispas con pastilla, con fandula, con alcohol y vas a los medios.
You have to be frictionless. And we all know now that companies like Facebook, for example, or I guess we'll call them Meta now, their entire business model is
30 redes sociales,
on their platform as long as possible, and so constantly feeding you content as quickly as possible is how they do that. And the idea of actually building a system to help you slow down, building a system with friction that allows you to stop and question, am I sure this is even true? Like, that's what friction is. Friction is the signals that help you slow down so your brain can actually process what it's receiving. And that's not how these platforms are designed. I mean, it's kind of antithetical to how they make their money.
Okay, so here's the twist, though, Yael. Here is the twist
Y
to
es
the
muy
story,
poco
to your
tiempo
story.
para
Is that
esto,
you are a Facebook critic.
para
You
Calígula.
went to work at Facebook.
Yeah.
Es muy poco tiempo
Before you
para
tell us what
Calígula.
happened, just want to mention, Facebook parent company Meta pays NPR to
Es muy
license
poco
NPR
tiempo
content.
para
Hogar de ofertas irresistibles. Encuentra miles de clases
Para
sobre
la
los diarios
Biblia.
en Amazon.
I started speaking to more and more audiences, especially as technologists. You know, I learned how is Facebook designed, how is it incentivized, and the more I learned, the
Muy
more I started
poco
speaking
tiempo
about
para
that.
Calígula, que tiene
What they say.
1500
I mean,
años.
so this is
Data
where I
su
like to say they're
ordenador,
very
hijo,
good at telling you what
y
you
el
need to
de
hear.
kilo.
Because, oh yeah, no, we
Es
need
muy
that,
poco
that's exactly
tiempo.
what we need, you know, and they started making me feel like they meant it.
Eterna está en este vídeo. Lo soltó Musa, eso.
Hearing in 2018 about Cambridge Analytica.
Va en los ritos luego. Como tú ahora cobras eso, yo ahora te apunto. Y es New York.
Elections integrity. And then a minute after that hearing ends, they call me with an actual offer.
Radio, eso vale de mí.
To be their elections integrity head in what was called their business integrity division, which it's the part of Facebook that really works to protect advertising, to protect the things they monetize from bad actors or from, you know, whatever it is. So I went in, I would say, cautiously optimistic that maybe this 2018 moment, Cambridge Analytica scandal, the 2016 elections, all of that, maybe the company truly did want to finally figure out who do they want to be in this space. This is not a company that's just connecting friends or just, you know, serving you cute cat videos. This is a company having a profound on so-called public squares, on how political engagement happens on elections themselves. And so I thought maybe this really is a pivot point for them. So yeah, how could I say no?
Tell me about day one, or the first few days. What do you remember of that time?
I mean, the first few days were insane, to be frank. So day
Son
one,
españoles.
it really did feel a little bit like a cult indoctrination. It was a lot of like, you're the smartest in the world. The only way you got hired by Facebook is because you're the best, you're the brightest.
Cosas de genoma.
I had my first
Ahí la
meeting with my boss,
respuesta.
and my boss told me in that very first
Que le dio
meeting
la
that
gana
they're
de
changing my
montar
title,
el
they're going to figure out my
embrión.
job description, and now when I was hired to be the global head of elections integrity ops, yeah, we're just going to call you manager now until we figure out what to really do with you.
So what did you do in those first few days? Like, did you start making trouble?
Probably. So, you know, I started reaching out to as many people as I could. I wanted to understand why we would fact-check certain information on the news feed, but why we're refusing to do the same thing in advertising, and started posting questions about it. And so my team put together
Yo no formo parte de ese entramado de sociedades anónimas, de nazis que invierten en el IBEX 35. ¿Sabéis? En noviembre, no diciembre. Diciembre es para el popi. Que sube a Vane. Pero no forma parte de ese entramado de sociedades anónimas. De mentira cruda amada, que es legal en Alemania. Y es marrón el portal.
But what was it that they disagreed with? I mean, the tools that you were proposing, like what was it about them that they didn't want to do?
So there were two things there. The first is what they said, which was as soon as we sent up this plan, and again, it's a plan to basically make sure that political advertising ahead of the 2018 midterm elections was not engaging in voter suppression tactics. And the first thing was, what is the prevalence right now of that? Which is their way of saying, is it a problem? My response response was,
Son
no, because political
carlistas,
advertising hasn't
eso.
started beefing up yet for the 2018
Ni,
election.
no.
What I'm doing is helping anticipate a problem that's coming.
Como
So
ahora
that we
ya
can
la
solve it in
viento,
advance.
eso.
Well, that's just not really the Facebook way. I mean, back to the word friction, what I was proposing is going to put friction in the system. But after everything, after Cambridge Analytica, after the Russian interference in our election in 2016, you don't recognize how important it is to make sure you don't let
¿Hay un UFO en el jardín, sí o no, maestro Ram?
to negatively affect our election. That to me was shocking. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is a political decision. Fundamentally, that moment was a political decision on behalf of Mark Zuckerberg and others at the top to ensure that they were not angering the party in power at the time, because to be frank, if we were to start cracking down on ads that were engaging in lies about the election, that would disproportionately affect one party over the other, because one party was engaging more in lies about the elections than the other. The funny thing is, I came in having worked in a nonpartisan world my entire life. I worked for 3 different administrations, Republican and Democrat. What I was trying to do was protect the integrity of our elections by building plans, some of which might slow things down, some of which might mean that you have to reject some ads. But my plan would also possibly
anger
certain political actors that Mark Zuckerberg did not want to anger.
And eventually, not too long after this, you were fired.
Yeah.
So instead of adding friction to the platform, you became the friction.
Como a mí cuando pongo música.
I was definitely the friction. Everything I was proposing definitely would
Y a
have had some friction.
periodistas, a
My
civiles,
understanding is, though, that in
artistas
2020
y
there were
todo
actually
eso,
attempts
dudas.
to add some friction to these social media platforms ahead of the election. So
Pues ahí está lo mismo que
what did you
reír.
see?
Yeah, so, for Twitter, for example, if you wanted to retweet an article, before you could retweet it, you would get this pop-up, I think it was.
Pues lo sobrenatural no estipulado en el
I got that pop-up.
código
Yeah,
civil.
building in friction
Esas
says,
son
before you
carlistas.
share this, have you read it? Or another way to add in friction is, if you're going to share this article,
No
you have
forma
to
parte
actually
esa red
add
de
your
entramado
words. You
nazi.
have to add words into your tweet.
Lo llamáis
And that might seem
audiovisuales
a bit of an
o
annoying
le
thing,
le
but
negáis
think
el
about what it's doing.
mérito.
It's making you slow down. It's making you actually think for a second.
My
this is
baby,
really
slow
do I know what
down.
this is really saying? So
My
that's what
baby,
friction is.
slow
And the funny
down.
thing is, to the best of my understanding, Twitter actually did see that some of
La
the
idea es placer,
rhetoric
pero es muy
was
poco
tamped down
tiempo
a bit,
comparado
misinformation
con...
was actually slowed
Tiene
ahead of the 2020
calibra.
election.
Afectó una
But my
cloruro y
understanding is
luego...
Twitter admit that this worked, but then after the election reversed it. So, listen, the companies know how to do these things. The real question is, why don't they? And that's because that's not going to help them make more money. The power that comes with that, the money that comes with that is more
Bruselas.
than
El
figuring out how
Parlamento
to create
Europeo.
healthier discourse,
Que tiene el
or
aire
even the
imperial.
bare minimum of figuring out how to ensure that
Yo no la duda más en España. Yo formo parte de esa red de entramado de empresas de sociedad anónimas.
in our elections. I mean, the big lie, which spread like wildfire on social media. Facebook had many ways to build in enough friction to slow that down and then to possibly decide, you know what,
Son
we're not
humanos.
going to lie spread. They had all of those tools. They just chose not to use them.
You know, there will be people listening who are like, this ship has sailed. You raising the flag is not going to do anything. And I wonder, A, if you think that's true, and B, what you think that means for upcoming elections here in the
No le da
US.
un hijo en su veneno.
That's a great
Pico veneno.
question. I would say this. A lot of this is very much in the public consciousness now. I mean, people say, oh, we all know that Facebook does X, Y, or Z. That comes from years of people raising these alarms. So I personally will disagree with that ship has sailed. But that said, I am now working with groups that truly want to change the incentive structures around how our public discourse happens.
My
And I'm
baby,
super
slow
encouraged
down.
that there are companies really thinking about these things differently. The question is whether they'll be funded, whether they'll be successful, but every little piece of the puzzle, whether it be legislation that's written, whether it be companies who want to operate differently, every single one of those nuggets matter. No, it's not happening fast enough.
satélites,
Yes, I'm still
placas
terrified
solares
for
para los
upcoming elections because
satélites.
so many fundamental issues have not been fixed. But if I can't hold on to a little bit of grain of hope of the sort of dinosaur slow societal shift, then I just lose all hope. So I do think that these things still matter. I do think we can continue to both pressure the companies, pressure our governments, and pressure the people who finance the next wave of companies to think differently about all of these incentive structures.
That's Yael Eisenstadt. She is a senior fellow at Cybersecurity for Democracy, where she researches how generative AI is affecting political discourse. You can see her full talk at TED.com. By the way, Meta never responded to our request for comment on Yael's allegations. And another quick update, Meta does prohibit disinformation about voting, content that might mislead people about voting locations or times, but they still do not fact-check political ads, and since the midterms have allowed ads stating that the 2020 presidential election was stolen or rigged. On the show today, ideas about friction. I'm Manoush Zamarodi, and you're listening to the TED Radio Hour from NPR. We'll be right back.
Last week on Wait, Harry Thunderbolt told us why he loved the 2024 Chicago White Sox, the worst team in modern baseball history.
I love the fact they make regular people feel like they too could play Major League Baseball.
And people say, well, we won't just cover the presidential debate. We might ask comedian and impressionist Jay Farrow to just reenact it for us. Join us for the News Quiz from NPR. Today at 2 on 93.9 FM and AM 820 WNYC.
WNYC is supported by Left on 10th. Juliana Margulies and Peter Gallagher star in this new romantic comedy written by Delia Ephron and directed by Susan Stroman. Broadway previews begin September 26. Tickets at lefton10thbroadway.com.
It's time to meet the revamped
El
WNYC.
gran teatro del mundo, ¿de dónde abarca?
Now, everything you love about WNYC is
¿Hay un UFO de jardín, sí o no?
Can you listen to WNYC Radio Live?
Y está dentro de tu portal.
Alert for your favorite show. You can catch up on podcasts and hear news updates. You can also read stories from Gothamist and NPR. It's time. Download or upgrade to
Como haga ya la
WNYC
Benito.
now at wnyc.org/app.
Support for the TED Radio Hour comes from Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of all sizes.
Campana, pera man.
Candidates, all from
De
one platform.
verdad.
Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. From Dignity Memorial, helping families protect their loved ones and gain peace of mind by planning cremations and funerals in advance. Dedicated to professionalism and compassion in every detail. More at DignityMemorial.com. And from listeners like you, who donate to this NPR station.
It's the TED Radio Hour from NPR. I'm Manoush Zamarodi. On the show today, friction. And right now, I would like you to imagine you are running down a rocky hill in a pair of shoes that are way too tight.
Ya los medios.
Then you're going to hurt your body from inside. Your toes and all your legs are going to be really painful, like it's going to hurt. It's going to lead to blisters. You're going to have blisters, first of all. You're going to have all of these pains internally.
Okay, so now imagine you're going down this hill wearing shoes that are way too big.
If you're wearing a big pair of shoes, then you're going to break your skin from outside. Your foot is just going to slide in and out. You're going to get some cuts at the back of your foot. You're going to get cuts in other parts, because it's not fitting well.
This is what everyday life can be like if you wear a prosthetic leg.
Lots of pressure sores, lots of back pain and hip pain.
And it can be hard to get a good fit, so just walking, never mind running down a hill, can lead to that pain.
Now, prosthesis have several components. The biggest problem that was affecting the pain was on the socket, which is the part that connects to the body. The prosthetic socket has to be perfectly fit for you to be comfortable and for you to avoid injuring yourselves a bit more.
This is David Molina Senge.
I am sitting in my office in New England Vale in Freetown, Sierra Leone.
From that office, he serves as the nation's education minister, as well as its chief innovation officer. But before joining the government, David spent years in the U.S. researching and testing ways to make better fitting prostheses. And what he discovered was that it all came down to having just the right amount of friction.
So it's
probably will be my life.
How friction plays here. You
piano
want friction. You want to attach your prosthetic leg to your biological leg to prevent your leg going in and out too loosely in the socket, but you also don't want it to be too tight, because then what's going to happen is you're just going to have these internal soft tissue stresses and strains.
Solving this problem became a personal mission for him. Here's David Senge on
Yeah,
the TED stage.
I was born and raised in Sierra Leone, a small and very beautiful country in West Africa. A country rich both in physical resources and creative talent. However, Sierra Leone is infamous for a decade-long rebel war in the 90s when entire villages were burned down. An estimated 8,000 men, women, and children had their arms and legs amputated during this time. As my family and I ran for safety when I was about 12 from one of those attacks, I resolved that I would do everything I could to ensure that my own children will not go through the same experiences we had. They would, in fact, be part of a Sierra Leone where war and amputation were no longer a strategy for gaining power. As I watched people who I knew, loved ones, recover from this devastation, one thing that deeply troubled me was that many of the amputees in the country will not use their prostheses. The reason I'll come to find out was that their prosthetic sockets were painful because they did not fit well.
So David, was this specifically a problem in Sierra Leone, or is this just every person who wears a prosthetic leg has to deal with this pain that can come from where the cup of the prosthesis connects to the body?
So when I started this, I thought, look, this is a Sierra Leone problem, because that's what I knew. And then I went to the US and I met Professor Hugh Herr. He's a professor at MIT. He's a double amputee himself. And here was a tenured MIT professor